Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name's Don Sweeney. I'm one of the co-founders, co-CEOs of Ashling Partners, and I'm excited to have Brad Hairston join me today. I'll let him introduce himself in a second, but we'll be talking through the broadening ecosystem and impact that AI has brought to the automation discussion, and how you should really be thinking about how this may affect your organization. There's a lot of great content we're going to jump in. And Brad, I know you brought your A game with the content, so why don't you first start off by introducing yourself?
Thank you, Don. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks to Ashling Partners for inviting me to participate. I've been with SS&C Blue Prism for almost 7 years and played a variety of roles. Right now, I'm part of our strategy team, so I'm involved in a lot of different interesting kind of initiatives around helping us execute against our strategy and look at new partnership or acquisition opportunities, things like that. So that's been a lot of fun. Had a lot of experience the last several years working with great partners, including Ashling Partners and one of their acquired companies, Reveal Group, had a lot of collaboration with them, and so glad to be here. This is an awesome topic. It's the topic of the day, and happy to be here with Don to dig into it.
All right, so let's jump right in. So really, as we first get started here, we first wanted to ensure that everybody kind of has a similar foundation, if you will, of understanding across these three related yet different components that we're going to be discussing today. So the operating model, how the people, process, technology fit together, who does what when. The AI economics, this is an important one because this is where we talk about the cost and the business value, basically that ROI, get a measuring real business value, true cost, and get that true ROI. And then obviously change management. Change management's one that everybody talks about, but maybe is never quite the emphasis that it should be. This is as important as it's ever been, along with how significant of an impact this is for the change to people, not only their current roles, but how they see themselves engaging in the organization in the future. So we're going to jump into all of these through the call.
Awesome. So let's start by getting grounded on agentic automation. That's something you hear 100 times a day, every single day, no matter what you're reading, no matter what news source you read. So let's just talk about it. And a lot of you will be nodding your head saying, yep, I get it, I understand. But just so we're all on the same page, if you think about all the automation that exists today that's already in place, a lot of it, most of it, quite frankly, is very deterministic. So what does that mean? It means it's predictable, it's rule-based, it's structured. It can run automatically in a data center or on-prem or in the cloud. It doesn't need a whole lot of human supervision. Then generative AI showed up, and we're all familiar with that. We've all played around with it, or we use it every single day in our jobs. And Gen AI changed the whole scene. So now you have these large language models that can be prompted for advice, for ideas, for interpretation, for extraction. And this has opened the door to what's now being called agentic automation. And so the advent of AI agents has really been a game changer. It's creating all kinds of disruption. But we're really at the very beginning. It's not something that everybody's doing, and if you're not doing it, then you're light years behind. So we need to recognize that we're in the early days. So AI agents are a completely different animal from the flavor of automation that I just talked about. They can perceive their environment. So they have business context that they maintain through a workflow. They can reason or plan. They can make a decision on what they're going to do. They act in some way, and then they can actually learn and they can adapt based on those actions. And then they also can, be directed to pursue a goal or an outcome rather than just a set of business rules or, automating a task. So you can think about it this way: agentic automation excels when you need more adaptability, where uh, you know you need an automation to be able to interpret context, handle some ambiguity, and then adapt to unexpected scenarios. That's a good example of where agentic makes sense. When you need decision making of some flavor, you need an AI agent to reason through some problems and make a decision. So think of it as more like a junior analyst rather than a script or a macro. Or if there's unstructured data involved in a workflow, that's where traditional automation tends to fall short, because agents can interpret emails, they can interpret documents, they can look at images, they can look at conversations, and then they can extract meaning and take action on that. And then finally, agentic comes into play a lot when you need end-to-end ownership of a process, because agents can orchestrate an entire process, calling multiple systems, handling exceptions, and then adapting the workflow based on that context. So to sum it up, I think agentic is much better for complex, variable work that previously required human judgment, but it also brings with it, and we're going to dive into this, it brings with it much more sophisticated governance and monitoring implications. And that's the piece that honestly has slowed down a lot of companies in terms of adopting it, because they want to get all that figured out. They want to make sure they have a good foundation before jumping into it, because there are aspects of agentic that, kind of create new risk that need to be mitigated. There needs to be a plan, to handle those. So hopefully that gives you an example. This graphic kind of sums up some of the pieces and parts I was talking about. But it's definitely new. It's definitely different. It doesn't displace or render any of the existing platforms obsolete. In fact, it works with a lot of them in different ways. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well.
I think, Brad, maybe one of the other things that I like about this slide, having the person on there,
Hmm.
is you almost have to think about it as a person. I think sometimes it's a little too
Yeah.
simplified in terms of the set it and forget it mentality,
Hmm.
but this requires onboarding. Just, you use the junior analyst example, and I really liked that. You got to onboard this just like a junior analyst. You got to
Yeah.
sometimes mentor and manage an
Hmm.
ongoing care and feeding, just like a junior analyst would require.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, if we move to the next one there. So this is the Gartner infamous BOAT slide. So BOAT is Business Orchestration and Automation Technologies. And I say infamous because it seems like this is the topic du jour right now, especially people who follow Gartner. But and we didn't make up that name by any means. Some people love it, some people hate it. But the thought process here is historically, we've worked with organizations, Brad, I know you've done the same, where people looked at RPA as a center of excellence and, maybe an OCR, IDP, whatever you want to call kind of the scanning of documents, a separate center of excellence, and a low code a center of excellence, and maybe a BPMN solution, long running workflow, a center of excellence, and they would have four different tool based technology centers of excellence uh, that frankly are all overlapping and kind of converging into the same space. So Gartner is really focusing here on how all of these are really driving an orchestrated automation solution for clients nowadays. And this has only gotten more and more imperative with The agentic AI kind of filling in the gaps where there used to be a much more brittle, if you will, process, and kind of very structured, but uh, very fragile, from outside of that structure process. Now it's got much more flexibility. It's working on probabilistic versus deterministic capabilities. And so boat, I think, is really a great message for everybody to think about on how all of this has to come together. The human in the loop, the automation, the bots, whatever you want to call it, the AI agents, all of the things that you're seeing here are now all part of one orchestrated workflow. And so, to Brad's earlier comment, the governance required for this is now very, very important. You're not just looking at, well, what am I giving a bot access to? It's what am I giving all of these components access to? How do these components share data with each other, but only where you want it and how you want it? And how do they have access to the data? How do they make deterministic decisions? When do you want them to make deterministic decisions? These are a lot of components that are very, very important in how we're moving forward in this boat world. Brad, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, one of the things I like most about the boat, Don, is that business process orchestration, layer right there in the middle. That is really, really critical in this new era because it's you need that connective tissue between automation tools, not just the tools themselves. I mean, you need something that orchestrates humans and digital workers and AI agents and integrations. I mean, all of that has got to be orchestrated in the right way. And so, some people see that and they think, oh, that's business process management. We know what that is, but it's really bigger than that. It's a new and a lot of companies. I mean, we're calling it more of an agentic workflow orchestration. And it is essential, I think, in the new world where you have all these different worker bees. Now you have AI agents that we add to the mix, who are all going to be executing work and having some relationship to something that is being done. And there needs to be something that brings all that together effectively, or else it's going to be very fragmented and out of sync and honestly, probably chaotic. So that's the part. Every time I see that diagram, I like that. I like the fact that they have that right in the middle there.
And leave it to Gartner to actually create the boat image.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if they used AI to do that. They said, "Hey, create a graphic and, create an acronym." They probably did. They probably did.
Well, I wouldn't put it past them.
Well, the a key component of Boat is the AI agents, which we talked about before this slide. And so now let's talk about kind of where is the general public, all the companies that have been going down the path of starting to experiment, not just with Gen AI, but with agentic automation as well. What's the progress report thus far? And everybody's seen these white papers, these articles that came out months ago. The first one from MIT, where they said, 95% of these AI projects are falling short. I mean, that was quite provocative when it came out. Everyone was shocked, but I think they were right. And then right behind that came a Gartner article, and they had their own take, which is over 40% of agentic AI projects that are going on right now will ultimately be canceled by 2027 because of three reasons. And these three reasons are not just ones that Gartner identified. If you look at most of the surveys, or even go back to the MIT report, almost all the surveys are bringing up these three things as well as others, but these three are very common. Governance seems to be huge, huge roadblock to most companies because AI takes companies into a new realm. There's new risk, and then you read reports in the news every day about AI going wrong or going rogue, and a company that's paying the price for that. So governance is one. The escalating cost is another very common one that most companies probably weren't anticipating as much as they needed to. And then the unclear business value. So let's go to the next slide, Morgan, and let's talk about all three of those because it's really, I think, worth our while to dive a little bit deeper and not just talk about why this is causing issue, but what can we do to mitigate it. So if you think about cost, and I'll start with a simple example. Any of us that get on Chat GPT, if you're like me, you use a free license and you get on there and you prompt it and you use it in your work. Well, eventually you hit a wall where you've prompted it too much and it tells you, hey, you've hit a limit. You can't upload a file or you can't do a sophisticated prompt anymore today. Come back tomorrow at 3 p.m. That's happening to me a lot more often these days because I'm really putting it to the test. Well, the reason that's happening is it's expensive. I mean, every prompt is costly in terms of what the AI has to go through to process that request and to deliver an output to you. And it's not like something that just is free and doesn't impact anything and doesn't cost OpenAI anything. There's cost associated with it. If you think about an enterprise that's doing that at scale, and they may have an automation that is going to prompt an LLM 100 times a day. Well, now you're really starting to talk about cost. And by the way, that's nothing you can do for free. So every company that's using large language models or even small language models at scale, there's a cost associated with that. And the reason I'm bringing that up is that's something that a lot of companies didn't really think about when Gen AI started or when Agentic started making a splash. They went forward and started doing all these pilots and trying to push as many cool projects forward as they could. And they found out in the end that they hit a wall in terms of cost. It was really too costly. They weren't getting the return on investment because they didn't factor in all those things like the LLM, the token, the cost of
Yeah,
using so
token
many
cost.
tokens. There was also the fact that if you think about excuse me one second. Okay. If you think about the infrastructure that's required in some cases, GPUs and hardware and cloud computing costs and what have you. Too many companies went forward without thinking through those things. And then on top of that, when you get into agentic, these AI agents can make decisions on their own that can change direction. And so that can bring more computing costs with it. So in the end, it becomes something that can get out of control very quickly. And so one thing that I think, starting small, starting with a small scale deliberately is important. Be sure you're tracking the API calls, the cloud costs, the compute usage in real time. Don't just run a project for 2 months and then go back and look at the cost. You got to do it in real time so that you can assess, the real cost that you're taking in, and then you can adjust your expectations based on that. And then the final thing I would say on this point is choose the right tool for the job. So I said before, a lot of the existing automations that are in place, some people have said they should go away. Everything should be done by AI agents. But many automations are still best solved by deterministic automation. And if that is the case, if you don't need this agentic capability, it's going to be most cost effective for you to continue to do that with some of the existing tools we have today, whether that is RPA or it's business process management or other automations that have been, custom developed. So I think, unless your company name is Google or Meta or Microsoft, and you have unlimited tokens to work with, I think it's best that you really think about um, what's the best tool for the job, and that decision process is not going to go away. It's going to become even more important in the world of agentic. So let's move to the second one. And Don, if you have anything you want to chime in on these, just interrupt me along the way for sure.
No, I think your last topic is spot on, is people need to make sure that they don't see this as a replacement. They see this as an augmentation. So we've effectively added one more tool in the tool belt. It's a
Yeah.
very shiny, very capable tool, but it's still an additional tool in the tool belt. And love
Yeah.
your points on making sure that we don't try to have an agentic solution do everything that the others are capable of doing and
Yeah.
needlessly running up costs on tokens and everything
Mhm.
else. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
totally
Exactly.
tracking. Love
Good.
the
Good.
content.
So the next problem that is causing so many projects to fail that Gartner identified is unclear business value. And this one's no surprise. I mean, this happened with Gen AI quite a bit as well. A lot of projects, a lot of pilots got started, and many of them didn't stand the test of time. And the reason is, you know, AI is very powerful. Agentic AI is extremely powerful, but organizations sometimes implement it because it's trendy rather than it's solving a clear problem. And that the outcome of that AI project is clear and it's something that makes sense to use agentic AI. So when you don't have clarity around that, stakeholders, they don't see the measurable benefits. So the support wanes, the funding wanes, the KPIs may be misaligned. So deploying an agent, that reduces processing time by 5%. I'm just throwing out an example. That may not justify the complexity and the cost of actually deploying an AI agent. So a lot of teams spending energy on the wrong outcomes. They're doing things to build these impressive AI solutions, but they're not really solving key business bottlenecks. And so this is not a problem that is unique to agentic AI, of course, but it is rearing its head quite a bit, and we see that all the time. So how do you address that? Well, define measurable KPIs up front and tie your AI outcomes directly to business metrics, whether that's saving time, it's revenue uplift, it's error reduction, whatever it is. One example in the old day of automation, we would say we want to automate invoice processing. In the new world, we would say we want all invoices to be paid and reconciled by month end, a bigger, broader outcome. Well, if you don't have the right KPIs against that allow you to measure it and then report back to the business and show them the benefit associated with that, then you're already, doomed to fail. And so um, that's a clear step that goes along with most IT projects, honestly, but especially projects in the agentic world that are run or sponsored by business people. Speaking of them, you need to involve the business owners very, very early. And I would say co-design the agent workflows with the teams who will actually be impacted by them. And that seems like common sense, but often that doesn't happen. A team will bring something to the business and say, look at this great thing we did, that we have an agent that does this for you. If they weren't involved in actually helping with the design, then you're running the risk of it missing the mark. So I think that's a big thing. And then I think finally, I would just say, communicate the benefits effectively. I mean, document the success stories, document the ROI, and do it in a way that the stakeholders understand it. And even if the outcomes are somewhat incremental, you need them, talk their language, put it in terms that they understand it and they get it, and that's going to help you be successful. So those are some ideas there. Don, any other thoughts to throw on that one before I move to risk?
Yeah, really just making sure you have continuous process improvement metrics. So you talked about the right metrics. Sometimes talk people, organizations, whatever, talk about like headcount reduction,
Yeah,
things like that. I mean, we not only fundamentally believe that's the wrong metric, but it's also a one-time metric.
yeah,
So really having right metrics that are items that you can track quarter over quarter, month over month, and how those are doing and how you can continually improve upon those metrics
yeah.
are the right way that we would agree to measure those.
Hmm. Yeah, totally agree. So the final big hitter that Gartner identified, that I agree with and that we see all the time is risk, inadequate risk control. So the governance aspect has been front and center, and executives who are all excited about AI, they're forcing this issue with their risk management teams and others because they see all the negative press and they hear all the horror stories of where AI is going wrong. And they also see a laundry list of regulations that are getting, continually getting put out. And depending on where you live, some are seeing more of that than others. So it's concerning to them, and they know it's a new world. They know that all of that needs to be buttoned up very, very carefully. And when you think about, this again, agentic AI, these agents having the ability as they become more autonomous, they have the ability to make decisions in some cases without human approval. So they can, potentially, because they're again using large language models to help them with their decision making and their ideas, they can make decisions, they can act on incomplete or biased or misinterpreted information. So without robust controls, you can have compliance issues, security issues, ethical issues. You can have erroneous actions that could propagate across a lot of different systems. So how do you mitigate that? Well, first of all, implement a governance structure, a framework before you begin any agentic AI project. I mean, that's pretty basic, but and I think that's what a lot of companies are doing is they're trying to get all of that crystal clear from the beginning. So assign clear accountability for each agent. There ought to be a person or a team that has accountability for those agents. And you hear a lot of talk now about how humans are going to be working, directly with AI agents or supervising AI agents. That is the world we live in, and there's a reason for that. They need to be supervised. There needs to be accountability. You should include AI and automation oversight in your risk and compliance frameworks. Some companies will say we've got a great governance board, we've got airtight compliance. Make sure it accommodates this new world of AI because it has added new things, new dimensions to that some companies have really neglected to go and address. And then a few more things about agents. I mean, you really want to log all agent actions and decisions. You want to have an audit trail. That's critical. We don't want them going off and doing their thing, and then we have to unwind that on our own and figure it out if something goes wrong. We need to set thresholds for agents that determine when human in the loop is required. That's really, really critical. And then, the other things are more basic, but you want to have an incident response plan. What if an agent causes harm or goes rogue in some way? How do you roll that back, or how do you shut it down? And how do you prevent cascading failures? I mean, all of those things sound, again, pretty basic, pretty straightforward, but they need to be double checked, triple checked, quadruple checked, and they need to be rock solid before you go into this world of agents, because agents are amazing in what they can do, and they're going to allow us to take automation to a new level. But because of the way they operate and because they're getting more and more autonomous, you have to have those guardrails to keep them in check. And so if you don't have that 100% where it needs to be, then I would say sit tight, be patient, get the governance framework and get all that in place before you move forward. Don, any things to
Very,
add there?
yeah, very well said. Lots of great content. I hope people are furiously taking notes. I think one of the things to emphasize there is just making sure agents are being told where to see where the results should come from, what data sources they should have, and even in the sequence that they should be searching those data sources, right? So you're really trying to contain where those answers are coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go to the next slide, and you can tell us all about governance and what that can look like.
Yeah, so you heard me mention earlier about how we do not condone the separate siloed COEs or governance groups by tool, and that Boat is really visually bringing these things together that have already started to converge from a technology perspective anyway. These are really the six categories that we see across the board being your key areas of focus for governance and for really kind of like a center of excellence type solution. So without necessarily reading the entire slide here, strategic direction governance, obviously making sure that you've got an agreed upon vision of what this group is trying to entail, trying to have both short, medium, and long-term goals, and making sure that those are objective, measurable goals is very key. That helps with funding. That helps with a lot of the other components that we'll be talking through the rest of this section. Architecture and security, I think Brad just did a fantastic job of talking through a lot of the key points on the last slide. So I'm not going to go into great detail there, but just making sure that you've got a foundation of trust, really understanding where the access to data is, the priority of the data, as I mentioned, and all of the items that Brad was mentioning on, okay, is this something that can be probabilistic? Is this something where I'm okay with an agent making a decision? And if so, is there a human in the loop that's getting those results and then making a final result? Or is this something that goes directly to your end customer? Obviously, those are different levels of risk. Next, what kind of talent are you looking for? Even within our own organization as a consulting firm, this is starting to change the type of resources we're looking for. Your traditional business analyst starts to become more and more into generative AI prompting and becoming a prompt engineer within their normal business analyst responsibilities. Some of your technical resources start to become a little more full tech stack. So just kind of making sure that you've got the right skills and that you are upskilling or cross-training individuals to have a longer term objective. This will go into the conversation about change management, people making sure that they see a path for themselves as this starts to get rolled out and how that path entails growth for them or participation for them is very key. Pipeline and priority. This goes back to the business value that Brad was just talking about. You got to make sure you've got a great pipeline that is objectively stacked, ranked by measurable business value. You want to make sure that if you've got two opportunities in your pipeline, one's finance, one's HR, and you pick, say, HR, finance isn't yelling at you saying you got favoritism or vice versa, that there's objective measurable criteria and that is true business value to the organization. There's such thing as green dollars or hard dollars versus blue dollars, which is maybe a softer dollar. However you measure value, again, make sure that it's objective criteria and you can stack rank your opportunities by business case, not only by business value, but then cost to business value, kind of XY axis, if you think about it. And you can really start to communicate a bunch of great opportunities. And that's how you naturally grow your program by demonstrating the value and demonstrating the demand for these automations and solutions. Continuous improvement. I already mentioned kind of the continuous improvement metrics, continuous process improvement (CPI) metrics, but just making sure that you are setting yourself up for success. One of the easy examples I use is everybody in the world seems to automate procure to pay. Probably one of the most common areas to drive a lot of different automation initiatives. And AP is typically about efficiency and effectiveness. It's more about doing it well, doing it right, and doing it with minimal total cost of ownership. So coming up with things like cost per invoice, cost per PO, cost per payment. What is the cost to process one transaction or every transaction in your organization, and then improving that month over month, quarter over quarter by having these kinds of metrics and these kinds of measurements. And that goes to the value tracking and insight. So making sure that as you are building these, you are achieving the goals that you set up in the pipeline priority and kind of the other things, and making sure that you have the right insights. What would you do differently? Having those sessions where you kind of do your lessons learned, your debriefs at the wrap of an engagement, and making sure that that kind of feeds the cycle of continuous improvement within your own program, not just the metrics for each automation, but you as a governance group and center of excellence. So, Brad, I know you got a lot of passionate commentary on this one, so I'm gonna
Yeah, I
try
mean,
to.
first of all, it's an awesome framework. I mean, I this slide really does cover it all. Um, yeah, the only thing I would add is for any customers of Blue Prism that are on this webinar, and you're familiar with our robotic operating model. We've had to extend and modify that to account for AI integration and agentic automation, and so this model, this framework that Don just went through is spot on. If you go to the next slide, Morgan, um, this is what we now are putting out to our customers and others. And so the robotic operating model has essentially become the enterprise operating model. And so the EOM it's still built on the old ROM that we developed over the last 2 decades to help companies automate at scale. But now it includes things like data and model governance for AI and ML components, AI model management lifecycle. I mean, things around that, human AI collaborative patterns rather than just human bot handoffs, things like that. And it includes, you see responsible AI on there, responsible use. It includes things around decision transparency and explainability requirements. So we knew as things were changing before our eyes, as they were for all of us, we knew we needed to take the ROM, the robotic operating model, and expand it and account for all this change with AI, with Gen AI, and now with Agentic. And so that's what we've done. It syncs up completely with the prior slide with the framework that Ashling Partners is using, and many Ashling Partners engagements have leveraged our robotic operating model as well. So yeah, it's having a framework, having a methodology, having something to kind of start with and guide you, I think is always good. And a lot of man years have been poured into both of these to help our joint customers, et cetera, make sure they're putting the right things in place as they try to enter the agentic automation era and tackle it the right way. So
So maybe great call out there, Brad. Sorry to interject, but
yeah.
you're looking at a tried and true methodology that has been
Hmm.
enhanced to include the changes required to now include agentic. But it's not like Everybody kind of just got together in a room and 5 hours later had a new methodology to
Right.
try to catch the agentic momentum here. It's
Yeah.
much more of like, hey, 90% of this has been around for, as you said, 20 years.
Hmm.
We've just enhanced it and made sure that it's still relevant today for the changes that have occurred recently.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And you see on the second column there at the bottom, change management is a key part of it. And change management is even more, it's increasingly important in the world of agentic. So why don't we go to the next slide and you can share your thoughts on that. I love this slide as well.
Yeah, so if you kind of start in the top right, and we're going to go counterclockwise just to make sure people are paying attention here. But you know, you first think about preparing the organization before you even get to change, right? So making sure people understand what we're doing, who is involved in this, who's going to be impacted by this, making sure that you are as transparent as possible to build trust is the key. If people are hearing kind of the rumor mill of like, oh, there's something going on and I don't know, uh, that you're starting off on a negative already,
Yeah.
and people will fill in the gaps of what they don't know with their own thoughts, and those typically are not positive thoughts. So very rarely does an organization get the benefit of the doubt. So get out there early and often, and make sure that you are transparently explaining what happens. As we get to explaining what happens, that define or why phase, the why is so important. So many people focus on the who and the what, like what we're going to do, who's going to do it, but the why is just as important. Like people need to understand and get behind the emotional aspect of what this is going to do and why we are doing it. And so, really making sure that we are answering the why and getting the stakeholder groups to really understand that change. Again, not just what is changing, but why it's changing is going to be very, very important. And tying that to corporate objectives is always great if you can do that, right? So, really just aligning to corporate objectives. There's the old theory of like everybody kind of rowing in the same direction. This is that model, right? So making sure that people understand that they are rowing and that they're rowing in the same direction and that they are a valued rower, if you will, is really, really key. And then boy, reinforcement, reinforcement, reinforcement. So, depending on which article you read, people need to hear things 5 times or 8 times. I've seen both stats before it really sinks in. So, you can't just say, oh, well, I told you in January that we were doing this. Now it's November and we're going live, and you should remember everything that I told you back in January. All
Yeah.
kinds of things have occurred, work wise, personal wise, who knows what, between when you maybe first told them and now. So you really want to make sure that there are constant iterative communication steps through the whole process. And again, the more you appear to be transparent, the more there will be trust. And the more you are getting them involved and sharing the why and having them feel like they are a sense of ownership in this process, the more they're going to trust and buy into the process. And then enablement, making sure that everybody is trained on what that new process is going to be, how they will benefit from that process, but how they should use the process, right? And what their new jobs are. Job aids, again, got to tell them more than once. Can't just be like, hey, here's how you do your new job, and then you walk away. Things like job aids and other things that reinforce how they are going to do their job going forward is very key. Having kind of super users that are aligned into various departments, having kind of a frequently asked question or kind of help desk, making sure that they feel supported and that they understand that there is a ramp time to get engaged and to truly see the benefit. They're not going to see the benefit on hour one or day one or maybe even week one. But over time, as they're getting used to their new role, they will see those benefits. Brad, again, I know this is a passionate one for you, so I want to
Yeah,
give you some
yeah.
time
You
to
you
talk
you
through
hit
as
on.
well.
I was nodding my head the whole time because everything you said is it's spot on. The only few things that I would add, you mentioned trust a lot, and I could not agree more. I mean, people need to trust not just that this new agentic technology works, but that it's going to make the right decisions, especially in ambiguous situations. So it's a totally different when you get outside of the deterministic world. The trust becomes even more significant, and people have to be helped through that. You mentioned communicating and communicating often, and boy, you know, you can't say it enough to people within your organization that this is about augmentation. It's about doing more with what you have, and it's not about replacement. Even though it may seem like it, you see a picture of an AI agent, and people are like, "Well, that's going to replace me and 10 other people." But communicating well on that topic is critical. And then the final one I would add is, I mean, again, I loved all the points you made. Just the fact that process redesign it becomes unavoidable when you start implementing agentic automation. I mean, you can't just automate existing processes because agents work differently. They enable entirely, new operating models. So you really need change management to encompass, business process reengineering. And we're seeing more companies do the old business process reengineering than doing more of that now than they've done in the last, 5, 10 years. So yeah, there's a lot there's so much change. Almost everything's changing. And just when we think it's done, it changes some more the next day. So I think that's the new norm, and it can be great for our companies and can be great for all of us individually if we embrace it the right way. And certainly some new skills are needed by all of us. If you haven't learned how to do prompt engineering, that seems like a pretty corny or basic thing. But again, the way you prompt a model matters, and the way that a digital worker prompts a model matters. And so the more skilled we all become at that, I think the better we'll get better outcomes, and we'll get more use of it, and more productive use of it. Well, I think we're about to wrap up. I just wanted to take a couple minutes and talk about kind of our own journey at SS&C with agentic automation and with automation in general, because SS&C Blue Prism, kind of pioneered the RPA space 25 years ago. And 3 years ago, we were acquired by SS&C, which is a $6 billion publicly held company that provides software and services to financial services and healthcare. And in the financial side, it's primarily around investment management operations. So we have operations that run like most of the hedge funds around the world. We're the largest transfer agent for mutual funds in the world. So very people intensive, a lot of, outsourcing kind of services and what have you. And when Blue Prism got acquired, the first thing that our leadership said was, we need to drink our own champagne. We need to take Blue Prism and the platform, and we need to automate as much as we can internally to reduce costs, but also to be, to serve our customers better. And so what you see on the green in the green is what we have done over the last few years, where we've implemented over 3,000 digital workers. We've built 20 AI agents, and you can see some of the metrics, some of the returns that we've shared with the market. Over 200 million in cost takeout annually, and also we've positively influenced 600 million in revenue. So we've had some really good results from that. The agents, that was kind of at the tail end of our program, and going back to some of the things we've already talked about, we were looking at those things that really called for a different level of automation. They have a little bit more autonomy, there's a lot more like ambiguity. There's unstructured documents involved. Things like processing credit agreements or processing, PCAP statements that all the mutual funds and private equity funds and what have you have to take care of. Those things are not only tedious, but they require, interpreting information, dealing with a lot of unstructured information, and the actual workflow itself can vary each time it's executed. So we built agents to process those things. They've been very beneficial. We're now making those available to our customers that have those same pain points that want an agent to do that. And then the only other thing I'll mention along the way is governance was a huge, huge focus for us because we operate in the most regulated industry. So one of the nice outputs of this effort was we built a gateway to do real-time monitoring of every AI interaction in agentic or regular automation whenever it taps into AI. So we have those guardrails that can provide that real-time maintenance and prevent, or mitigate hallucinations or prompt injections or any of those risks that are now front and center. So that's also something that we've taken to market. But yeah, we learned a lot through that. It's impacted our methodology. It's impacted the way we talk to our customers. And I say all that not to brag, but to say, for everyone out there that hasn't begun this journey, it is a process. It does take some patience, but if you take the right steps, you get the right foundation, you deal with governance up front, it can really, really take off and become a huge accelerator for you on both the revenue and the cost reduction side. And I think all of you before too long will be right there. I'll take a breath. So Don, do we have any questions? Or I guess Morgan, do we have any
We do
questions
have a
that have come in?
question. She pinged me here.
Okay.
So I hope you enjoyed your breath because I'm going to give you this first question to answer.
Okay.
So it says, please provide some guidance into the observability and monitoring required to assure business service and enable effective troubleshooting when things break. Scalability is of particular interest.
Wow. That's a
That's a lot in one question.
it is a lot. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I can do it justice, but I can certainly follow up with the individual that presented the question and make sure we get that person the right answer. Um, I think when it comes to again observability, what we knew in our customer zero journey when we were building agents and going forward, we knew that we were going to be hitting these large language models not just once or twice a day, but hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times a day. So we needed something that was going to put guardrails not only on the prompts going into the models, but the outputs coming out. And so having that real-time observability and monitoring and the guardrails around it, honestly, was something that we didn't see. We didn't have that capability. We didn't see anything on the market, so we built the AI gateway to do that. So I'm not going to pretend it's the only one on the market now. There's other companies that have tried to put something out there in that way, but I think that's what you're asking about. There is investment needed in something like that. It's not something you just go out and build overnight. It's complex and it's something that needs to account for, again, regulations that are changing, ethics, bias, and then all these new risks that have showed up at our door, given the fact that AI is driving a lot of things that we as humans are doing, but also our robots, our digital workers, and AI agents are doing without human intervention. So I can follow up, provide more, or get the right person involved. That sounded like there was a little bit more technical technology behind that question, and probably out of my skill set, but I can get an answer to that person.
Next question, I'll let you take a deeper breath this time. So I'll first answer and then would like to get your perspective on the answer as well. So it's where are most companies starting with agentic automation? So I really see this, I'm going to say, in three categories. Certainly, call center is an area where we see a lot of agentic automation. We also see a lot of agentic automation in shared services where people feel like it is quote unquote less risky to add agents into, interpreting your purchase orders or, order to cash, procure to pay, record to report type stuff. But the interesting one, kind of my third bucket, is we also see people revisiting automations that they did with maybe RPA,
Mhm.
and there were too many um, kind of exclusions or exceptions where they didn't quite get the business value they were looking for, or maybe
Mhm.
they got business value, but they just want to revisit it now anyway. So really kind of taking old automations to the next level is a very common example that we see.
Yeah.
So I kind of gave three buckets, Brad. I don't know if you want to either give a fourth or fifth bucket or maybe highlight one of the ones that I already used.
Yeah, I agree with all those. I would just say anything um, that high volume, repetitive, rule based, but then it has some decision making complexity. So it's beyond what traditional automation, deterministic automation can handle. I think that's something that is probably a good candidate. It also needs to be well documented, data rich. Agentic AI, needs to learn and act, confidently, and unstructured data often is providing a lot of the information that it needs to respond to and that Gen AI needs to interpret for it. So those are two things, but the functional areas you mentioned, Don, absolutely agree. Final thing I would say, focus on areas where the risk of mistakes is manageable,
Yeah.
but the upside is high. Don't
Okay.
go, yeah, don't do something where if it fails or the AI goes rogue and it's going to put the company at, its life at risk or anything like that. Something that is manageable, but only something that has some nice upside. Don't do something that's going to save, $100 a month. It's just not worth it. And I guarantee you the cost of the tokens will exceed that probably in the first day. So make sure you look at both sides of that.
So, Brad, we are at the top of the hour, and we have more questions than we have time, knowing that we frankly just don't have time. I'm wondering if you can do speed round answers to two more questions. I'm going to challenge you on this one.
Okay.
All right. So the
My best.
next question, where does AI governance belong in an organization in this new era of agentic automation?
Um, well, it's definitely different. I mean, and it used to in the past, it often sits with IT or compliance or maybe in the center of excellence. With agentic, the stakes are so much higher, because the software can act autonomously. So it really must be broader, more strategic, and be integrated across multiple areas. So business leaders, IT and automation teams, risk, legal, compliance, they need to be involved, data and analytics teams, and then even I would say even end users, business operators need to be looped in. So cross-functional, it's all of those teams working together, because it is a different animal and it cannot be addressed in the same way as the prior flavors of automation.
And then last one we're going to get to here, if we know who submitted the questions, which I assume we do, we'll follow up via email. Are most companies using a buy or build approach with regard to AI agents?
That's a great question, and most of the analysts agree that buy is the kind of early position because companies are still getting their feet beneath them. They're still building skills. They're still trying to figure out governance. So if a company shows up, and doesn't have to be a big company like SS&C Blue Prism, it could be an AI startup that has 50 people in it, But if they show up and they have an agent that solves a pain point and they can provide that agent on a agent for hire kind of basis, a lot of companies are biting on that right now. I think over time, and it's probably going to happen faster than we think. Over time, companies are going to become more comfortable with building their own, supporting their own agents, and so that will shift, and they'll be more comfortable doing it themselves. But right now, yeah, it's buy versus build, and again, if you check in with Gartner or Forrester or IDC, any of them, they all say the same thing on that topic.
Awesome. Well, want to be respectful of both your time, Brad, and all the attendees. I think we had 100% make it through the end here. So obviously great content. We'll follow up with the remaining questions. And thanks for your time, Brad. Really appreciate you jumping on with us.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate it.
And thanks for everybody for joining. Have a great day.